Good morning. Good morning. I know it's a convocation and you're all supposed to be very solemn, but as your chairman said, it's a celebratory occasion. And I want to begin by thanking your chairman and your director for being kind enough to invite me here. Am I audible at the back? Because you're not visible to me, and if I can't see you and you can't hear me, there's not much point speaking. It's a sheer coincidence that I happen to be in Calcutta, and I have a prepared speech which I was asked for by the director's office, and I transmitted my prepared speech to the director's office. As I was flying down from Mumbai to Calcutta, I suddenly got this fear, because nowadays it's fashionable to read other people's speeches by mistake. And I said, suppose I end up reading the director's speech, I would have made a fool of myself. So I better keep a plan B, because that's what managers are supposed to do. And then I went for a walk this morning, and some new ideas came to my mind. And I said, yes, I'm not going to read a prepared speech, I'm going to speak extempore. And then I came to the office here and I talked to your chairman, who's quite an irrepressible chairman, with his ideas on entrepreneurship and how India should progress. So that gave me a few more ideas, which I then jotted down. The only trouble I have is that your young friend Afshan, who has been comparing this show, has written in advance that after I finish speaking, she's supposed to say thank you for your very inspiring address. So that puts a huge burden on me. So Afshan, I'm sorry to, tell them about your prepared speech. But if I don't deliver, then Afshan will fail to change what she's written, and you'll think this thing is not very plausible. But I'll try. And I kept this paper close to my heart, because that's where my pocket is, because I want to speak to you from my heart. And not something that I've written. It's like a microwave dinner which I pull out from the refrigerator and I sort of heat up and give you. So let me talk to you from how I feel after all these experiences this morning. Your chairman spoke about this day being very special, and he likened it to a father who's seen his daughter growing up, and he's seeing his daughter go away, but the connection continues. With due respect, he has no daughters, so he doesn't know what it means to get a daughter married off. I have 2 daughters, so I know exactly what it means. But I think his metaphor was very appropriate. You don't need to have a daughter to know what it feels like to get your daughter married off. But I wanted to use a different metaphor for this day. And I take this metaphor from the world of nature and animals. If you see how a crocodile takes care of its young, crocodile doesn't look very pretty. And the mother crocodile lays the eggs. And the eggs are kept inside a particular place. And she hangs around, waiting to hear some sounds. And she knows the baby crocodiles are going to come out. And when the baby crocodiles come out, they are running around. And after some time, a few days or weeks, the mother crocodile opens her jaw, and all the baby crocodiles are put into her mouth. Initially, people thought this is a cannibalistic tendency. But actually, the pouch, the lower jaw of the mother crocodile is a very secure place. And all the baby crocodiles are sitting there, almost like you pack your suitcase. And then the mother crocodile goes gradually to the river or the ocean, and she opens her jaw, and the little crocodiles come out and find their way into the real world and how to meet challenges and survive. It's a very beautiful act of nature, because it's associated, this great act of motherly affection is enacted by an animal which doesn't look very nice to the human eye. And I would like to add this metaphor to what your chairman has said, that today the mother crocodile, which is your parents, your teachers, your elders in the family, your faculty here at Globsyn, are going to open their mouth. And you're going to be let out of the pouch into the world to fend for yourself. And for the first time, as your chairman said, you will not have the same peer group around with you. So as a representative of the mother crocodile generation, I would like to wish all our young friends all the luck and blessings that elders can ever offer you. And through your journey in life, as you associate yourself with ventures, always remember what sacrifice and pains your mothers and fathers have taken, your teachers in school, in college, and in Globsyn have undertaken. And it is that honor that I would charge you to live your professional life, as I think any good professional should. So good luck and Godspeed. The world that you're about to enter has to be thought of very differently. If you read many convocation speeches, they all look pretty similar. They end up telling the young people how they should lead their life, live with values, work hard, do good for your society, and all of those are right. But I want to take a slightly different take on this. The world that you're going to go into is actually 3 different worlds. And all those 3 worlds are going to be in your head. The first world is what I call my world. It's about what you want to do in your life. You want to become a vice president. You want to become a CEO. You want to make money. You want to be famous. You want to be rich. You want to be all of that and more. But you have insecurities. You have issues and problems to deal with. And you have to manage all of these. These are the things that occupy your own mind in your private moments. And every human being has his ambitions and his insecurities swirling around his mind, known only to himself, not even to his mother or father or his wife. They are his world or her world. The second world you'll enter is the world of transactions. There will be things happening. You'll prepare a purchase order, you'll deal with a supplier, you'll deal with a distributor, you'll raise an invoice. You'll have a lot of transactional duties to perform. And if you do those very well with knowledge and perspicacity, you might get promoted. I call that the second world, the world of transactions. And then there is a third world, which I call the world of relationships. And a lot of things get done through relationships. You have to know somebody, and I'm not saying this in a bad sense, that you have to fix things, but you have to get along pleasantly. If you're seen as an isolationist who likes to do things only by himself, it's very difficult to survive in the world of business. All of these are important. In fact, research has shown that approximately 1/3 of your development happens in my world, 1/3 of it happens in the transactional world, and 1/3 happens in the world of relationships. But although they are all equally important, the first 2 everybody knows, because my world is a selfish world. It's a world which you naturally think about. The world of transactions is a real world, it's physical. You think about it. But I do think that many young people who come into the world of management and business have underestimated the value of the third world. The third world being the world of relationships. So today I would like to just share with you a few perspectives on how important it is. It is not enough to know intellectually that 1/3 of your development comes from the world of relationships. So I want to tell you a few stories and anecdotes with which you may be able to better crystallize the idea I would like to be in your mind. There's much more that the world achieves through relationships than through any other form of social transaction. When I want to be if I'm a nice guy, if I'm a helpful guy, if I'm a connected guy, it's a huge advantage. But if I'm helpful, connected, and nice, without a competency in doing something, then I'm a charlatan. So once you have mastered your knowledge, what you're taught in the college, whether it's financial management or marketing management, to be Suchismita, to be a sweet smiling person, to be a person who can get along with other people, Subhashini, are very great virtues, and I hope I will illustrate that to you. Don't underestimate it, because you're all exposed to newspaper and magazine editorials which suggests that a CEO has to be a tough son of a you-know-what, and he has to be able to stare down people, bark things at them. That's sometimes there, but it's not necessarily true. And I just want to touch upon that. The important thing is that to be really interested in people and relationships, you have to be humble. And management education doesn't give you that humility, except at Globsyn, maybe. You go into the world of management thinking you know a lot of things. It happened to me, and I'm going to tell you stories about myself, not because I'm a great guy, but because these are common stories of common people. And it's going to happen to you for sure. Back in long ago, 1974, I was appointed as a regional manager for Hindustan Lever in the north of India. And I went to work in the Jalandhar market with a salesman who was twice my age. His name was Mr. Sood. And since I was his boss's boss, I wasn't just his boss, and I was only 28, it does not surprise you that I was a bit conscious of that. I was a bit arrogant. And he was 56, but he was a salesman. I went with him from shop to shop, trying to sell products like Lifebuoy and Surf and Dalda and whatever. And in every shop, he spent the first 10 minutes talking with the retailer about his daughter-in-law, his son-in-law, his brother, his sister, his wife's health. He seemed to take 10 minutes to come to the subject of how much more Lifebuoy could be bought by him. As a person with an engineering mindset, I found this very wasteful use of time. I'm a bit of an industrial engineer in my thinking. I used to carry a pad in my pocket and I used to write down number of minutes spent in transacting business and number of minutes spent in making gentle inquiries. By lunchtime, I came to the conclusion that 56.3%, I had a slide rule in those days, 56.3% of the time was being misspent, and 44.5% was being spent on selling. And therefore, twice the efficiency could be achieved if all 100% would be spent. That's an industrial engineer's approach. I mentioned this to him at lunchtime. And he said, you're right. I wish I could spend more time just walking in, telling him how much he should buy and walking out. Now, why don't you do it in the afternoon and show me? And I was very upset because I thought he's challenging me. And anyway, I did not know whose daughter-in-law was about to deliver a baby and whose wife was unwell. But I did it in the afternoon. It was hot as hell in Jalandhar. And I made a hash of it. I could neither inquire about the retailer's family, nor could I sell any soap. And at 6 o'clock in the evening, when we finished, the lesson was obvious. And he put his hand on my shoulder and said, you're my officer, but you're a young man. You're like my son. I think you'll do okay in life because you made such a mess of the job in the afternoon. But I think you've learnt your lesson. That if you don't have a relationship with somebody, you're not going to sell him anything. So it's part of selling. Please don't separate the two. And because you undertook to do it, rather than tell me, Aukat pe aa jao, be in line and follow my instructions, I think some traces of humility through your arrogance I can see. And I think for me it was a great lesson. In the value of relationships, relationships cannot substitute efficient work, but they can enhance efficient work. So do think of this world of relationships, and this is one lesson that I learned. The second episode I would like to narrate is that you must know how to observe something, because observation is your next teacher. Once you finish with Globsyn, there is no RCB or Banerjee or somebody who's going to walk around and explain things to you. You're going to learn it by yourself. You are your teacher. And you must know how to teach yourself. It is incredibly easy to be taught in a class. It is incredibly difficult to learn for yourself. And I want to take away two little stories, not to do with me directly, but to do with a sport that I love dearly. I learned tennis at a young age here in this city of Calcutta. For those of you who don't know, I was born in this city. I was raised in this city. I am a Calcuttan. And I used to play tennis at the Bengal Lawn Tennis Association at South Club in those days. It's been a passion for me. And when Ramanathan Krishnan, who many of you are very young, will know that he was one of the early stars of India who went into Wimbledon. When he was a young boy, he was somewhere in the south. And in 1952, Ramanathan Krishnan, on the little budgets that were available in those days, writes a story that he went to England. And he was allowed to take part in some of the tournaments. He had no equipment. He had round neck Genji, not t-shirts. Other people wearing Fred Perry shorts and Fred Perry t-shirts. And he was wide-eyed and quite awestruck by all the people he saw and things that were happening. And then he got to see the finals of Wimbledon for the first time in his life in 1952. Now I've been to Wimbledon without being a player, and of course it's an awesome sight to see. And 1952 was a great match between Frank Sedgman and Yaroslav Drobny. And Ramanathan Krishnan's father was sitting by his side, and he was so struck. I must tell you that he was only 14 years old at that time, 15. He was watching the face of the tennis players, Frank Sedgman and Yaroslav Drobny, looking at the elegance of their strokes. And his father nudged him and said, "You fool, if you want to understand how to play tennis, watch their feet, not their face." And then a great penny dropped for Ramanathan Krishnan, because you really play competitive tennis with your feet. We don't think of tennis that way. We think of the stroke and the grip and the racket. Everybody's been taught those. Once you have learned that, what makes you different from others is how you move your feet and position yourself for the ball. So I found this a very good experience. When you watch your bosses, your super bosses, and see how they work, remember this little story. Look at how they do it and not just what they do. Because it's in the how that you narrate your stories, you learn your lessons, and not from the how. And there's a second story also from the world of tennis from 1953. I know these will sound very, very ancient stories to young people, but believe me, they are timeless and they're very inspiring, even to an old guy like myself. So Mr. Krishnan, Ramanathan Krishnan, was in the UK and he went to play Wimbledon. And he got knocked out in Wimbledon very early. But to give young people a chance, those who got knocked out in the first round and second round will be allowed to play something else called a plate tournament, Plate. So he played in the plate tournament. And in those days, there was an English tennis player who was also playing in the plate tournament. And his name was Howard Walton. I don't know how many of you watch and follow tennis, but Ramanathan Krishnan was down first set, love 6. Second set, they played best of 3. He was down love 5. And the game score was love 40, which meant that there were 3 match points and he was out of the plate tournament. And something happened to him. And he doesn't know what happened to him. He took the next 13 games in a row. And he won the second set 7-5 after being love 5. And he took the third set 6-love. And so there's a second great lesson that he writes about. He says, it ain't over till it's over. There's always a chance to fight. And this is something that you'll find happening not just in sport. It happens in one-day cricket. It happens, I'm sure there are many sports examples. It happens in the world of business as well. That act of tenacity and not giving up till you got what you wanted, and yet keeping your mind open to new ways of doing it, is a skill that nobody's going to teach you. And you're going to learn it. And you're going to learn it by knowing how your seniors do it rather than what they did. Never emulate what your seniors did. Always look at the how. That's where the lessons are. The third thing I would like to mention is that you're going to make mistakes. There's no manager who has risen in his career without making mistakes. And it's a huge, huge act of humanity and relationships to know how to forgive a mistake and yet encourage a person. If you're the boss and if you're the subordinate, how to make a mistake and still walk out with your self-esteem intact. In the world of business, we don't do this too well. If one quarter's results go, if one territory sales go, we write off people. Our job is to nurture people and make. I want to tell you a story. Many years ago, more than 20 years ago, I was very fortunate, I was lucky. I got appointed to the board of Hindustan Lever. I was only 41 at that time. And if you are on the board of Hindustan Lever at 41, you tend to be a little like that, you know. And I can't deny that I must have been a bit like that. And in my department, we had a specialist in garments business, and I knew nothing about garments. And he frauded the company for 1 crore of rupees. Now in today's 2G scam world, 1 crore looks like pocket money. Jhalmudi money for spending at Esplanade, you know. But I'll tell you, 1 crore was a heck of a lot of money in those days. It's like 50, 75, 100 crores today. I was most embarrassed because I was a newly appointed director. I'm sure I was walking around like a proud peacock, and under my watch, the company had lost 1 crore of rupees. At that time, I had a chairman who's well known in Calcutta. He's called Ashok Ganguly. And with great nervousness, I went to him to break the news to him. And I told him, this has happened. And he could be a tough boss, so I thought I'm going to get my head chewed off. But he could see that I was nervous. And he said, listen, why don't you sit down? Have a glass of water. And after my glass of water, he says, calm down. Tell me the facts. What happened? What do you know? And I told him. Ashok Ganguly looked at me and he said, you know, you can't create a mess and run away. You stay back and sort it out. If you're a true leader and a true manager, it's not that you made a mistake that matters, that you sorted out the mistake that is what will count. I stayed back, and luckily for me, everything worked out okay. And I'm narrating this story to you to mention that arrogance will come to you naturally. We are all victims of it. Put my hand on my heart, let your chairman put his hand on his heart, let your director put his hand on his heart and say, never had an arrogant moment. And I'll say, there's a liar. We tend to be that way. Some event happens which knocks you into shape, and that event comes out of a relationship. Somebody who's willing to forgive you and still encourage you. Somebody who's willing to be forgiven and go back and do the work. Because it is that karma for which you're employed, not for your ahankar. And this is something that would be well worth remembering. Nobody will teach you this lesson. You will learn it on your own. But when it happens to you, I hope you'll remember. You have to be deeply immersed in your profession. I sometimes despair that many young people don't do much reading. I don't care whether you read it on the internet, or you read a book or a magazine, or attend a conference or a seminar. But for God's sake, do one of them. You can't be doing nothing of them. How do you then stay current in your profession? Unless you're immersed in what you're doing. And you do riyaz. If you're a musician, you'll do riyaz. If you're a tennis player, you'll spend 8 hours, 10 hours on the court. If you're Sachin Tendulkar, you'll be at the nets for 10 hours a day. Only managers are the only profession who expect that after graduating from whichever institute, for the rest of their life they are well equipped. They would have scant regard for professional journals. They'll probably not read too many management books. On the ground it's all rubbish, which many of them, by the way, are. They would not attend conferences of CII, All India Management Association, whoever. I don't think you can be current that way. There's a delightful story that I remember. I used to be in my career sometime a brand manager for a soap called Lux Soap. All of you heard of Lux Soap? You know all the film stars use it, right? That's the only way for Aishwarya Rai to be as beautiful as she is, or for Hema Malini to have been as beautiful as she was. Well, Lux was launched in India in 1928 and always had Hollywood actresses. Because in 1928, Indian actresses were not supposed to model, you know, for things like soap and cosmetics. And so we always had Hollywood actresses who modeled for Lux Soap, telling Indian women that they would look beautiful if they use the same soap as somebody else. They believed it also, by the way, and that was very helpful to make the company what it was. For the first time in 1940, an Indian actress posed to say, Lux makes my complexion beautiful. Anybody knows who that actress was? 1940 is so long ago, none of you will know it. Bravo, who's that? There's somebody who got the right answer. I think you must give them a bottle of champagne for such a deep knowledge of management as has been demonstrated today. Leela Chitnis. Now, many of you young people say, Leela who? Never heard of this person. Leela Chitnis was even before my generation, I would say. But Leela Chitnis broke into the world of what was then Bollywood in 1940 by sheer accident. Leela Chitnis was a middle-class Maharashtrian girl who was studying in St. Xavier's College in Bombay. As it so happened, and she was studying, so it was not from a family where girls were not supposed to go to college. In the 1930s, that was quite a forward-looking family. And she was very interested in literature and dramatics. And she saw and heard a stage director called Mr. Chitnis, Dr. Chitnis, Gajanan Chitnis was his name. And she saw him and got quite infatuated with his savoir-faire, his general approach. Anyway, they decided to get married, and they got married, and they had 2 or 3 children. But you know, to be a thespian is not easy in terms of earning a living. It is not like having an MBA degree. So there were always tough times. And she used to accompany her husband and take her 2 or 3 children with her. And when the husband was directing the play or acting out a role, she would be sitting in the corner there with her 2 children next to her, and she would be stitching and sewing and hemming and doing odd jobs for the theatre, which would earn a little bit of extra money for the family. And at that time, there was a fantastic Marathi play called Raja Harishchandra, which was being enacted. And she sat at that corner every evening for hours together, listening to the whole dialogue of this play. She was not conscious that she was listening to all this. And then on that magical day when the play was to open, or a magical day when the play was to play, was to be demonstrated, the lead actress could not come. Something happened. And there was panic. Tickets had been sold, and there was no lead actress. And Leela Chitnis said, I can do that role. They said, come on, show us. And she stood on the stage, and she could emote every line, she remembered every word, she remembered every facial expression, and they donned her costumes, and she played out, and a new star was born. Until that day, nobody knew Leela Chitnis other than Dr. Gajanan Chitnis. Out of such accidents, careers are made. Her great virtue was she attracted luck to come to her because she was completely immersed in what is going on. She could have been completely oblivious of the dialogues that were going on, but she was watching. And she was so immersed in the art of theatre that it all registered in her head and she could reproduce it just involuntarily at the right time. I'd love to see managers like that. Managers who are constantly learning, managers who are observing, managers who are into it with a lot of energy, so that the magical moment, when the union has gone on strike, when the government has denied you some license, when the competitors launched a new product, all those lessons come to you like Leela Chitnis. I'd like to wish all of you good luck in trying to become what Leela Chitnis was to theatre and film, that you can do so in business. If you succeed, maybe I can get you to pose for Lux soap as well, as an additional benefit. I would like to conclude by saying, try not to take yourself too seriously. You probably spent the last 25 years being told to take everything very seriously, study hard. You should study hard, I'm not telling you not to. You should get good marks, I'm not telling you not to. But don't become so full of yourself that you forget to enjoy yourself. Life is a journey through the rose garden. God has lifted you all the roses around you. What's the use of leading a life when you walk through the rose garden without having smelt the roses? There are yellow roses, there are pink roses, there are red roses. And the roses are there for you to stop, feel them, nurture them, enjoy them, smell them. And if you don't do that side of it, you can't be a rose scientist. So you cannot lead your life just doing 100% efficiency and work. There's a very fine book which I would commend you to read. It's an old book, maybe 20 years old, called Zorba the Greek. I don't know if any of you read this book. Zorba the Greek was written by a Greek author called Nicholas Kazantzakis, and it's about a miner who was so fixed on opening new mines, taking out the ore, and getting the best price for it, that he would become very rich. And Zorba was his assistant. And Zorba was a guy who was full of fun and life. And they would work during the day, and in the evening, Zorba would sit by the fireside, he would have his little glass of wine, he would fool around with the girls, while the boss, as he called him, was serious. Very, very well planning about the next day's work and how to open the next mine and how to earn the next dollar. A number of verbal transactions took place between Zorba and his boss. And Zorba was tormented in his own world with his insecurities, his need to make money. And one day, Zorba says to his boss, "Boss, you know something? You got everything that's required in life. You got money. You got assets. You have people working for you at your command. When you clear your throat, 10 people run. You have power. But you don't have friends. You don't have relationships. You don't let your hair down. Be normal." And the boss says, "Zorba, how do I do that?" He says, "Come and dance with the girls. Have another drink." And then he gives him a drink, get uninhibited, pulls him to the fire, and the boss also enjoys himself. He dances, he talks to the girls, he talks about their families, talks about things other than mining. And then he says, "Zorba the Greek taught me a lesson. There is more to life than just making money through mining." That takes 350 pages. I have told you in about 3 minutes. Enjoy your lives, have great fun. God could not have put you in a more fortunate position. Amongst the 6.5 billion people on this planet, you and I have a very fortunate position. There is no point counting your misfortunes. There is great value in being aware of your fortunes. You go with the good wishes of all these mother crocodiles, your teachers, your parents, your director. Go out there, smell the roses, enjoy your life, and God be with you as you graduate from this wonderful institution. Good luck.